The December 20th, 2013 special meeting of the Monroe County Legislature will now come to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
President Adair.
Here.
Mr. Ansello. Ms. Andrews. Mr. Antelli. Mr. Barker. Mr. Baroth. Ms. Boyce. Dr. Carbone. Mr. Colby. Mr. Daniele. Mrs. Draw. Mr. Gamble. Mr. Gamina. Mr. Haney. Mr. Hanna. Mr. Howland. Ms. Kaylee. Mr. John Lightfoot. Mr. Willie Lightfoot. Mr. McCann. Mr. Michike. Mr. Morelli. Dr. Quattro. Mr. Rocco. Mr. Tucciarello. Mrs. Valerio is excused. Mr. Wilcox. Mr. Yolovich.
At this time, I'd like to begin the meeting with a moment of silent prayer. Legislator Jeffrey McCann will now lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Legislator McCann. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Pursuant to the authority invested in me as President of the Monroe County Legislature by Section C2-9C1 of the Monroe County Charter and Sections 545-5 of the Rules of the Legislature of the County of Monroe, I hereby have directed this special meeting to be called to reconsider and adopt file number 13-0358BR and adopt file number 13-0371 to be deemed as a matter of urgency pursuant to Section 545-24A-3 of the Rules of the Monroe County Legislature of the County of Monroe.
There is a hearing loop in place to assist those who are hearing impaired. Any assistance should inquire through the clerk's office. Thank you.
We will now hold the public forum. Is there anyone registered to address the legislature at this time, Mrs. Rossi?
There are 2 public forum speakers registered this morning. Would Mr. Anthony Costello please come forward?
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to speak before the legislature this morning. First of all, I think that the opportunity that this county has with Citygate is something that should not be taken lightly. Costco, in a recent conversation with Judy Siles and Vince Esposito, recently made it very clear that in the event that they do not receive a finished pad, and that means that all of the balancing we have to do, all of the work, all the utilities, everything has to be done. If it's not ready by June 1st, that means they won't open in October 1st. They won't open after October 1st, which means that it will be held over to possibly 2015 or 2016 because the stores that they're going to open in 2015 are already in place. So this could go on for a couple of years. So I think the legislature needs to know that what is at stake here. There's 1,022 permanent jobs, 1,527 construction jobs. There's over $16 million in sales tax, total annual real estate taxes of somewhere around $27,500. Holding up funding for the relocation of Children's Detention Center by the legislature is putting at risk $177 million in private investment. I just think that I urge the legislature to do the right thing today and approve the funding necessary to relocate the Children's Center. And this also would allow us to move forward. Costco is very clear in direction that they go. They have many communities that will provide them with land at no cost in order to draw them to their community. We have an opportunity here to have Costco. It's also an opportunity for Costco. The second choice, I want to remind the legislature, the second choice for this Costco was outside this county. So let's not repeat Eastview Mall. Thank you.
Our next speaker will be Mr. Gordon Forth. Please come forward.
Thank you. Mr. Costello has outlined for you a very attractive and compelling project here in the community. If the timeline is not met for the Costco site, the project will be jeopardized. We're playing Russian roulette with a very important project, and we would ask that the legislature consider having a special resolution for a special emergency funding facility or making it part of the 2013 budget. I think that each of you realizes the impact that this can have in terms of jobs and taxes, and we'd ask you to consider that resolution. Thank you.
This concludes our public forum.
At this time, I would like to move to reconsider file number 13-0358BR. Do I have a second? I have a second by Legislator Tucciarello. Is there any discussion on the reconsideration? Legislator Andrews.
Good morning, Mr. President.
Good morning.
It's rather early for us to meet meeting. Obviously, we've never met at such a time before in the past in the 8 years I've served here, and I would imagine in the many years preceding my 8 years of service. So my question to you, why at this point in time are you moving to reconsider this motion at this early morning date?
I believe that we are reconsidering that, and I believe your questioning is out of line for what the purpose of the meeting or the time of this meeting is. So thank you.
Mr. President, I think all the legislators have a right to know why we're meeting at this early morning to reconsider this at this point
And
in
I
time.
believe
I
I
would
did
respectfully
everything,
ask you to answer that
and I
question.
believe I did everything that I had to do in order to call this special meeting. And since at this time we have on the table, on the floor is the reconsidering, that's what I'll discuss. So if not, that's it. Thank you.
I'm asking you for your rationale for reconsidering at this
Thank you.
particular point in time. Highly unusual for us to meet at this hour in the morning.
Point of
I
order,
agree.
Mr. President. We have a rule, we have a matter on the floor that has absolutely nothing to do with the time.
That is correct. Thank you.
It is a motion.
Point of order, yes, it is.
To
Point
the
of order. Yes, I agree. Point of order.
A motion to reconsider is occurring at this particular point in time. Asking why we're meeting at this early hour for this particular motion is entirely appropriate.
I'm
because
agreeing
it's
with the
highly
point of order.
unusual.
Do with the motion on the floor, Mr. President.
Would you like to?
It is the
would you
motion
like
on the
to?
floor.
Would you like to?
I don't think.
Point of order. Would you like to?
To the point of order.
Point of order.
I
To the
did.
point of order.
I just ruled on it. Would you like to rule
I'll
against my
appeal the
point of order?
ruling.
You'll
Yes.
appeal it? You have a
Yeah.
second? Second. Roll call vote to appeal my,
Who seconded
My
the
roll.
motion? Thank you.
thank you.
Mr. Tucciarello, yes sustains the ruling of the president. Ms. Andrews? Mr. Ansello? Mr. Antelli? Mr. Barker? Mr. Baroth? Ms. Boyce? Dr. Carbone? Mr. Colby? Mr. Daniele? Mrs. Draw? Mr. Gamble? Mr. Gamina? Mr. Haney? Mr. Hanna? Mr. Holland? Ms. Kaylee? Mr. John Lightfoot? Mr. Willie Lightfoot? I'm sorry? Mr. McCann? Mr. Michike? Mr. Morelli? Dr. Quattro? Mr. Rocco? Mrs. Valerio is excused. Mr. Wilcox? Mr. Yolovich? President Adair?
Yes.
Yes. 19-9, President's ruling is sustained.
Okay.
excuse me, 18-9.
Back to the motion to reconsider. Is there any other discussion? Legislator Haney.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd just like to say on the record regarding this.
Consider is non-debatable.
Les-
Am I correct or not?
You are not correct in that. Thank you.
I'd like to say on the record, Mr. President, that while I certainly understand the desire of the majority members of this body to reconsider introductory 365 and to have a meeting to reconsider item 365, I just have to say on the record that I believe that it is totally absurd and disrespectful to have called this meeting in the middle of the night on less than 24 hours' notice. We are gathered here at 6:30 in the morning when most residents of this community are still in bed. And I think it's just total, and the public has no ability to be present or observe these
Legislator Haney
proceedings.
could say that most
And
people
I think
are in
it
bed at
is just
6:30 in the morning.
totally
Most people work, they get up very early and go to work. We're here to
disrespectful
do the people's business.
that we are gathered here
Excuse me,
at
folks.
this, that
Folks,
we've been summoned
excuse
here
me,
at this
excuse me,
hour.
Legislator Haney, excuse me. Folks, I know this is an unusual hour, but we have rules within this body, all right? When someone yells a point of order, the person at that time yields the floor so that they can state the point of order. We do not talk over it. So I will not have that happen within these chambers. I will give you the floor. I will let Mr. Haney, I will let Mr. Haney make his thing, but a point of order did come up. We cannot talk over the point of order, okay? So, thank you. That's what I'm trying to get to, Legislator Haney, but the problem was that you continued to speak when a point of order was yelled out. Thank you. Point of order is?
Mr. President, I'm making the point that Legislator Haney said this was the middle of the night and most people are not up.
Okay.
The fact of the matter is that most people work and are well up at this time of the morning. We're here to do the people's business.
Thank you.
And my legislators are happy to be here.
Thank you. Excuse me. Legislator Haney, please believe me, you don't need to do my job right now, okay? I am not ruling in favor of that point of order. Thank you. You've made your statement. Is there any other discussion at this time? You do.
Well, let me continue then to say that I think it is totally absurd and disrespectful, not only to this honorable body, but to the citizens of this community, to be conducting the people's business in the middle of the night. I can't believe there's hardly anybody in this county that wouldn't agree that it is totally absurd that we've been summoned here at 6:30 in the morning.
Is there any other discussion at this time? Legislator Andrews?
President, I rise to explain my vote. I will be voting against the motion to reconsider. No rationale has been provided by anybody, certainly to this side of the aisle, in terms of why we're meeting at this hour or this day to reconsider this motion at this point in time. I echo the sentiments of Legislator Haney that it's absolutely ridiculous and unreasonable for us to be convening at this hour to consider something that nobody has been provided any information about, and no explanation was provided by you, sir, as terms of why we need to be here at this point in time. So I'll be objecting to the motion.
Is there any other discussion at this time? Legislator Lightfoot?
Thank you, Mr. President. I too rise to explain my vote, Mr. President. One of my biggest concerns as a legislator always will be are the constituents and the people of this community. And as hard as it was for me to get here today, making different arrangements based on my schedule, thank God we did not have a fire this morning, or else I would not have been here today. However, I am here, we're here, and I rise to explain my vote. I will be voting no to reconsider this matter, Mr. President. I believe that I agree with my colleague, Mr. Haney, as well as a Minority Leader, Kerry Andrews, that this is egregious, this is unprecedented. I believe that the people have not had time, the citizens cannot be here. Most of them have to go to work. If they're not asleep, they're preparing themselves for work this morning on a Friday morning, getting ready to go into the holidays here. This business could have been taken care of in the January meeting. It's not, we've been constantly hearing that everything that we've been doing has been political, but we just lost a member of our legislature, and I think this is political, what's going on here today. And I think the community need to understand that who's really being political when our county government is under investigation, Mr. President. So I rise to say no to this political trickery that we're seeing here at 0630 on a Friday morning with less than 24-hour notice, where the people now is who we work for, who pay our salaries. They don't have the opportunity to be here this morning to hear what the business of this county is. So, Mr. President, I will not be voting for this mess, Mr. President.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion at this time? Seeing none, I'll move to a roll call vote. This is to reconsider the amendment 13-0385BR.
Mr. Tucciarello? Yes. Ms. Andrews? No. Mr. Ansello? Yes. Mr. Antelli? Yes. Mr. Barker? Yes. Mr. Baroth? No. Ms. Boyce? Dr. Carbone? Yes. Mr. Colby? Yes. Mr. Daniele? Yes. Mrs. Draw? Yes. Mr. Gamble? No. Mr. Gamina? Yes. Mr. Haney? No. Mr. Hanna? Yes. Mr. Howland? Yes. Ms. Cayley? No. Mr. John Lightfoot? No. Mr. Willie Lightfoot? No. Mr. McCann? Yes. Mr. Michike? Yes. Mr. Morelli? No. Dr. Quattro? Yes. Mr. Rocco? Yes. Mrs. Valerio is excused. Mr. Wilcox? No. Mr. Yolovich? Yes. President Adair?
Yes.
18-9, motion to reconsider passes.
Next item, please.
Item number 2, referral 13-58BR, providing that intro.
Moved by Legislator Yolovich, second by Legislator Howland. Is there any discussion at this time? This is the motion to adopt. Legislator Tucciarello.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you to the administration, can I ask for a brief update on why the special meeting was requested and necessary?
Through the President, thank you for the opportunity to answer the question. As Mr. Costello has stated during the public forum, the Costco project is running on a very strict deadline. In view of that, the county has been working diligently with the state of New York and the Empire State Development Corporation to find a solution to accommodate the Costco project. The number one priority there from the county standpoint was the relocation of our children's detention center from its current site to another location. We spent several weeks reviewing other possible locations with the state, and we settled on the location at Industry. Once we were able to determine that site, we then took up the task of rehabilitating those buildings to accommodate as many of our children as we could. As we speak, the state has engaged emergency construction contracts to do the construction project. There are men and women out there now, as there have been for the last several weeks, working. Taxpayer money is being spent on an hourly basis. The discussion with the state has always centered around a long-term solution, which is the county's purchase of those properties. In the meantime, before that could occur, we needed to take, the short-term step of these construction projects, the rehabilitation of those buildings, to accommodate the children to meet Costco's schedule. In essence, what that means and what the plan has always been is that those buildings would be ready for the move right at the new year. So that is one of the reasons why we're here today, because that deadline is fast approaching. And as I said, the state is engaging in construction as we speak. Our people from our engineering department and our human services department are out there every day making sure that the work is being done as required to have that building ready. We thought that it was very necessary to answer the question of whether we can continue to proceed with this project by having it in our capital budget. If we proceed without the capital budget being passed, there are, frankly, millions of dollars of taxpayer money at risk. Not just the money that's already been spent, but money that will be spent by not having this project available. Needless to say, Mr. Costello has already pointed out the benefits for the Costco project to this community. And I don't need to repeat those, but if the President will bear with me, what I would like to do is read a note from a memo submitted to City Council that elaborates a little bit on the benefits of this project to the community.
That's fine.
Thank you. And thank you to Ms. Seil for letting me borrow her glasses. The developer has requested a community benefits agreement with the City of Rochester, and the City Council and City Administration has agreed to that. Under the agreement, the developer will be required to meet the city's workforce goals of 20% for minority persons and 6.9% for women. The workforce requirements will be applied to the portion of the project being directly undertaken by Costello, totaling approximately $105 million. So that's 20% of his project, $105 million worth of work for minority workers, constituents of many of the legislators in this room. Also 6.9% for women, also constituents of many of the people in this room. If this deal does not go through, these jobs are lost. This income is lost for families. Focused several times by members of the minority caucus in this room, putting people to work. Here's an opportunity to do it, Mr. President. That's why we're here today. That's why all of us actually work 24 hours a day, not just 9 to 5, not just at night. If we are required to be here at 6:30 in the morning in order to do, Mr. President, I'm trying to answer the question.
Point of order. Go ahead. Pardon me?
What item are we on?
We are on item number 2, sir.
Is the Children's Center in item number 2?
I believe at this point it probably is not, but I'm going to rule you out of order.
And what's
I'm
your reason
denying
for
your
ruling
point
me
of
out
order.
of order? You
So,
just feel like it?
I'm denying your point of order. How's that? Thank you. You can summarize, please.
I know this is a difficult conversation
Sure.
For some people, but I think it's obviously essential that we have it. So everyone in this room knows exactly what is at risk here today.
Okay.
And that's why I'm talking about the jobs. That's why I'm glad Mr. Costello was here to talk about the sales tax. It's important. And nothing, by the way, Mr. President, should be held hostage. There should be no lines. There should be no lines drawn in the sand on something as important as jobs.
Point of order. I don't.
Mr. President, that was a quote.
Excuse me. Point of order is denied. I understand that, but I don't believe he said that to any of you. So at this point, let's let it go. Are you all finished?
Actually, Mr. President,
Please.
I would like to, if you don't mind, that was a quote, as
Okay.
was a line in the sand. That was a quote from Democratic legislators.
Thank you. Yes, point of order.
An individual in this particular caucus. That is, in fact, objectionable.
I will deny that. I will deny your point of order because it was not directed at an individual. He was quoting.
I appeal that.
It was told, so. Feel it? Second? Second. Roll call vote on mine.
Okay, let's see here. Mr. Gamble, you seconded? Pardon me. Okay. Yes sustains the ruling of the president. Mr. Tucciarello? Ms. Andrews? Mr. Ansello? Mr. Antelli? Mr. Barker? Mr. Baroth? Ms. Boyce? Dr. Carbone? Mr. Colby? Mr. Daniele? Mrs. Draw? Mr. Gamble? Mr. Gamina? Mr. Haney? Mr. Hanna? Mr. Howland? Ms. Cayley? Mr. John Lightfoot? Mr. Willie Lightfoot? Mr. McCann? Mr. Michikay? Mr. Morelli? Dr. Quattro? Mr. Rocco? Mrs. Valerio is excused. Mr. Wilcox? Mr. Yolovich? President Adair?
Yes.
18 to 9. President's ruling is sustained.
Thank you. I know that you were interrupted, and I did tell you, I asked you if you would please summarize, so please summarize.
Yes, Mr. President, thank you. I just, in further answering the question about the capital budget, the necessity, obviously, in order to have the Children's Detention Center project move forward, it needs to be part of the capital budget. We cannot amend the 2014 capital budget until it originally is passed.
Okay.
Hence another reason for being here this morning.
Thank you. Legislator Tucciarello, you still have the floor. You're all set? Okay. Other discussion? I believe Legislator Haney's hand was up first.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to sever the motion to have a separate vote on project number 8, the downtown campus for Monroe Community College.
And the second was where? Legislator John Lightfoot. I believe that at this time I will ask my counsel, but I believe that we are not allowed to separate, and that makes this motion out of order. We are not allowed to sever.
May I ask why we're not allowed to
That's
sever?
what excuse me, I'm not asking you, Legislator Haney. I'm asking right now my legal people if I am correct in that.
Mr. Chairman, there's actually two reasons for that. First of all, the capital budget is referred to in the county charter in the singular. In other words, one capital budget as opposed to many or more than one severed sections of the capital budget. So the first reason is our county charter mentions a capital budget in the singular, and the second reason is the custom and the practice of this body has been to deal with the capital budget as one item as opposed to one or more severed items.
Mr. President, I respectfully disagree with the opinion that has just been offered, and I'll cite two reasons for my disagreement. Number one, the capital budget actually is Table 2 of the annual budget, which was presented to this body by the county executive in November and was adopted by this body on Tuesday night, 10 days ago. And it consists of some 60-odd projects. It has long, and the capital budget is pages, as I said, pages 402, 403, and 404 of the budget. It has long been the accepted practice of this body that when this body adopts the annual budget, it adopts everything that is in that budget book. We have one vote, and that vote has long been acknowledged to be the approval not only of all the appropriations that are in that book, but also of everything else that is in that book. And we have that one vote, and it approves the procurement policy every year, which is in the front of the book. It approves the schedules of salaries and wages that are in the back of the book. It includes the approval of the creation of all the positions that are listed in the back of the book. It includes the approval of myriad, hundreds of fees that are included on numerous pages throughout the book. It has long been the practice of this body that the vote on the annual budget, and this body voted a week ago Tuesday night to approve that budget, that the vote of this body in approving that budget, approved everything that was in the budget book. Thus, the capital budget, since it was part of that book, has in fact already been adopted. What we are going to be asked to vote on this morning is not the capital budget. It is financing resolutions that finance the capital budget. Now, the distinction may sound subtle, but it isn't in the least. Not the least of which is that the adoption of the capital budget can be done by a majority vote, but the adoption of the financing resolutions to finance the items in the capital budget requires a 2/3 vote. Furthermore, Mr. President, the list of items that we have before us, numbering 52 separate items and totaling $82,090,137.31, is not identical to the list of projects that is in the proposed capital budget, and as I cited on pages 402, 3, and 4 of the annual budget book. There are numerous projects that are included in the capital budget that are not included in the list of bonding resolutions that we're being asked to approve this morning. Thus, the two documents are not in sync. Therefore, the second document cannot be constituting the approval of the first document, which, as I said under point 1, has already been approved, but cannot be seen as approving the capital budget because they aren't in sync. For example, there are 7 projects in the proposed capital budget that the county executive presented. There are 7 projects totaling $8,385,000 related to pure waters projects. Now, I understand why the bond resolutions related thereto are not in this package, namely that the administration has to have the approval of the state comptroller for these projects before this honorable body can vote on them. But there are 8 pure waters projects in the capital budget that are not in this list of financing resolutions. In addition, Mr. President, there are 6 projects in...
Thank you. Thank you. State your point of order.
I have absolutely no idea what this diatribe has to do with the issue about whether or not this is in order or not. Your question to your parliamentarian has been answered. If
believe
there's
it
an
has.
appeal to the ruling of the chair, let's have it.
Well, thank you for the point of order, because I agree with you wholeheartedly that at this point, I have ruled that the motion to sever is out of order. If you'd like to appeal the chairs. Okay, who made the motion?
Wait a minute.
Legislator Morello, you made it. Who's the second? Legislator Gamble. This is on my appeal, my motion to the point of order. Thank you. We're voting on whether to motion to sever this. All right, that's what we're voting on right now. I have made my decision to do that. you have now given me the opportunity to say you believe that my motion is incorrect, that my decision is incorrect, and now we are moving to a vote to see if I am incorrect or not. So we'll now move to a roll call vote. Thank you. I do not believe we can. I do not believe we can debate it. We never have. So move to a roll call vote. Thank you.
Appeal the ruling of the president. Yes sustains the president's ruling. Mr. Tucciarello? Yes. Ms. Andrews? No. Mr. Ansello? Yes. Mr. Antelli? Yes. Mr. Barker? Yes. Mr. Baroth? No. Ms. Boyce? Yes. Dr. Carbone? Yes. Mr. Colby? Yes. Mr. Daniele? Yes. Mrs. Draw?
Please do not.
I'm in the middle
Please
of
do
a
not
roll
interrupt.
call
You
vote,
cannot
please.
interrupt a roll call vote. You cannot. Please, you cannot. Please continue with the roll call vote.
Thank you. Mr. Gamble? Mr. Gamina? Mr. Haney? Mr. Hanna? Mr. Holland? Ms. Cayley? Mr. John Lightfoot? Mr. Willie Lightfoot? Mr. McCann? Mr. Michike? Mr. Michike? Thank you. Mr. Morelli? Dr. Quattro? Mr. Racco? Mrs. Valerio is excused. Mr. Wilcox? Mr. Yolovich? President Adair?
Yes.
18-9. President's ruling is sustained.
Okay. Is there any other discussion at this time? Legislator Lightfoot.
Mr. President, I just wanted to follow up with some statements that were made by our majority leader to the administration, or the questions that were there to you, Mr. President, to the administration. First of all, as a minority legislator representing many minority constituents, I was offended by the statement that this particular children's detention project will benefit all legislators and our constituents. I was offended by that statement. Every project we do should be
Point of order.
in mind
Point
our
of order.
constituents in every legislature.
We have a point of order.
But through you, Mr. President, I will
State your
move on
point
with
of
my
order,
question.
please.
Well, point of
what
it,
is your
are
point?
we
Legislator
still
Lightfoot.
voting on severing? I apologize, Legislator
No,
Lightfoot.
we're
Are we
not.
still voting on severing?
We've already done that.
We've already-
All right,
thank
take
you.
care. Thank you.
Thank you. So that was offensive to me as a minority and as one representing a minority constituency. But through you, Mr. President, to the administration, I'd like to ask this question. Did we not, I'm standing here holding several letters, I believe, dating back all the way to January, Mr. President, to the administration. Did you not receive several letters from this side of the aisle requesting information on the Children's Detention Center? As late as December 2nd, I believe, I requested to tour the facilities through you, Mr. President, to the administration. Were those letters not received by the administration?
Through the president, although I'm not sure what letters the legislator is referring to, I'm assuming if they were sent that they were received, and we are dealing with them in due course. If the legislator would like a tour, we'll arrange that promptly, perhaps right after this meeting.
Mr. President, again, I'm offended, Mr. President. As a legislator, our primary duty is to be about the people's business, Mr. President. And I've requested numerous times, all right, this side of the aisle has requested numerous times information on the Children's Detention Center. We wanted to go out and visit the Children's Detention Center. We've got nothing. We've got nothing. Now all of a sudden it's 6:30 in the morning. Now I can go on a tour. Now, today, after I've been requesting all year long to go see these young people, to go see these staff members, to see what's going on out here, as my due diligence as a legislator. But all of a sudden now, I can go to the Children's Detention Center. This is egregious again, Mr. President. I just can't stand to vote for any of this. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion at this time? Legislator Wilcox.
President, I'm actually rising to, it's a point of order. I would like to clarify the rules so that in the course of debate today, we actually adhere to them. I wanted to make sure you were aware of the debatable motions. When there's a point of order, if the legislator is not satisfied with the ruling of the presiding officer, the legislator may appeal the decision, and the presiding officer, then if they disagree, shall state at this point, not satisfied with the ruling of the presiding officer, the legislator may appeal the decision by stating, I respectfully appeal the decision of the chair to the legislature. The presiding officer then addresses the legislature as follows. Shall the decision of the chair be sustained? At this point, debate is in order. I think that's very important that you understand debate actually is in order. All right, so when we go forward, I hope that you don't rule us out of order.
Well done. Is there any other discussion at this time? Legislator Haney.
Thank you, Mr. President. To say that the fate, with all due respect to Mr. Costello, to say that the fate of the Costco project at the old Iola site is somehow dependent on the vote to be taken on the issue before us is totally facetious. First of all, Mr. President, I would think that if something was of that magnitude and that level of importance, that it somehow would have been introduced and discussed with this body and raised before the public on a timely basis when there could be reasonable studied discussion thereof. Instead, Mr. President, the first time this proposal surfaced in any way, shape, or form was about 3 o'clock on Tuesday afternoon.
I have a point of order.
We're on the capital budget right now, not the Children's Detention Center. I think that the legislator's comments are out of order.
Mr. President.
No, Legislator Haney, wait, excuse me. Okay. In reference to that, would this not be a better conversation for item number 3 that's on our agenda? Because
well, Mr. President, the Deputy County Executive just concluded a 15-minute oration on the importance of passing this item based on the Children's Center. Why can I not talk about the Children's Center if he can talk about the Children's Center?
Excuse me. There was a point of order called. That doesn't mean that I have ruled on the point of order. I'm just asking for clarification. We are all on number 2, which is the 2014 capital budget. Is that not correct? And
exactly.
At this time, what we have in front of us, folks, I have a point of order in front of me. You don't need to keep asking to double up on top of a point of order at this point, okay? All right? All right? Let me please explain what I'm talking about, and then we'll move on, all right? This is very easy. Legislator Haney, we are on number 2, which is to adopt the 2014 on the agenda as it is. The third item is on the Children's Detention Center part.
That is correct, Mr. President, but the rationale for our need to adopt number 2 has been cited to be the Children's Detention Center. I didn't make it an issue in item 2. They made it an issue in item 2.
Legislator Haney, please, okay? I am going to rule at this time that I would like you to summarize this up, please, and then I'm going to deny the point of order. But thank you for bringing it up, and I wanted it because I do not want that there's this. We're not doing what we're supposed to be doing at this point. We're on item number 2, Legislator. So please just summarize, and we can move on.
Well, Mr. President, the point is, Mr. President, that the Costco project, which in the last 48 hours appears to have become a matter of great concern for the county legislature and the planning commission, although we never heard of it prior to 48 hours ago or 72 hours ago. The Costco project will in no way be delayed regardless of the vote on item number 2. The facts, as stated by the Deputy County Executive, are, number one, the state has contractors on the site in the town of Rush, and they've been there, I don't know for how long, without our knowledge. But the state has contractors on site at the proposed new location in the town of Rush, and they are currently in the process of renovating the facility to our needs and specifications. And those renovations will be completed on or about the 1st of January. Secondly, the state of New York, according to a statement made by the Deputy County Executive at the Planning Board meeting, has agreed to lease the buildings to the County of Monroe for use as a children's detention center. The county executive, under the charter, has the power to enter into any lease that's for a duration of less than 5 years. So the state of New York and the county of Monroe can duly enter into a lease for the use of the facility in the town of Rush as a children's center today if they want to. They could have yesterday. They don't need our permission to do that. Therefore, Mr. President, the children can be relocated from the present facility to the new facility on or about the 1st of January, regardless of what it is that we do here today. The renovations are going to be finished. The state and the county have the ability to enter into the lease. The sale, in any eventuality, the purchase by the county of the site in any eventuality will not occur for months, because the sale of the property in Rush to the county requires the permission of the state legislature. The state legislature right now isn't even in session. I believe they go back into full session on something like the 15th of January. It would be, given how the state legislature operates, at least 2 months from now before the necessary legislation to sell the facility wends its way through the labyrinth of the state legislature. So regardless of what we do here today, the county's not going to be able to take ownership of that property for at least 2 months. The county can move the children to that property on or about the 1st of January.
Point of order.
So that the issue...
I have a point of order. Point of order has been rescinded. Please summarize, Mr. Haney.
Yes. So the summary, Mr. President, is that bringing up the Children's Center at this point, in regard to item number 2, is totally a straw man. The movement of the Children's Center will in no way, shape, or form be delayed by the failure to adopt item 2. The movement of the children will not be delayed. The effort to sell the property to Mr. Costello will in no way, shape, or form be delayed by our failure to adopt item number 2. And finally, Mr. President, I find it most touching that the administration is deeply concerned this morning at 7:30 in the morning about the welfare of the city of Rochester, when in fact just 9 days ago It led this body in taking actions in the budget which are going to cause a 5% increase in city taxes.
Just some. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We did. We did, and we've done it. I'm denying the point of order. Thank you. Is there any other discussion this time? Legislator Daniele.
Yes, through you to the President. For informational purposes, I mean, we're talking about the CIP. Huge project in the CIP is the MCC downtown campus. Can I ask, either to you or to the other side, whose district does the proposed MCC downtown campus reside? Just out of curiosity.
To the maker of the question, how is that relevant? We just moved to sever MCC in order to pass it this morning because we do fully support the downtown campus.
It's just a question. Is it an out of order question? I don't think it is.
I believe it's Legislator Gamble's district.
Is it Legislator Gamble's? Thank you.
Correct. Thank you.
And although I know it's not in the CIP at this point, but we also have this Costco project, and do we know whose district that's in?
I believe that's in Legislator Roth.
Roth's district. Okay, and I understand. I mean, it's not very important, certainly, to this item where exactly they are, but they are in Monroe County, and when things are in my district, I know they take extra importance, certainly to the people that live in my district, to economic development, not only in my district but certainly in the county as a whole. And we're looking. I'm a business person, and I understand that we play some games in this room. There are leverage points that we both use against each other. And when we're talking about a CIP and we're talking specifically about bonding, where we need a supermajority, where we need 2/3 vote, that's your leverage. And especially today, one of our legislators is not able to be with us. We need 2 votes to make this happen. And we've got a project on the table, MCC certainly, $80+ million worth of CIP projects in 2014. We're talking about taking a second vote on this CIP, and my understanding is after we take a second vote, if it goes down, for all intents and purposes, barring any drastic moves by this body, the issue is dead. $80 million worth of projects die, or at least are in peril.
Point of order.
This started out as a point of information, and I believe that the information.
I
I believe I heard point of information or a request for information, and that was answered.
It was a request for information, and now I still have the floor. But point of order, go ahead, sorry.
Point of information, then. I think after he received his answer, I don't know that it went through the president to continue.
Legislator Kelly, I believe he is making a statement right now, and as a professional courtesy, I believe we should let him make that statement. Thank you. I still have the floor over here to Legislator.
My point is, we have
summarize, please.
We have, as Mr. Costello stated, 1,526 jobs, construction jobs, on the line with this Costco project. Hundreds and hundreds of jobs that have to do with rebuilding roads and bridges and other capital projects that are crucial to the everyday lives of not only people in the 2 districts we just talked about, but certainly the people that live in my district, people of Monroe County. And we're playing ping pong with this issue. And, I'm going to stray a bit, and probably one of my own legislators may call me out of order. But the whole reason we got to this point, the whole reason we're jeopardizing a critical project, and many critical projects in this community, is, and the quote-unquote hostage situation, which, I'll take some credit for that word, by the way, since I have the floor for a second. But, we talked about the other side is saying they're not going to vote for this. Legislator Wilcox, Legislator Andrews in the media talking about this LDC investigation. And that the reason we're going to hold up thousands of jobs and millions of dollars worth of capital improvement to this community, projects like Costco that could go anywhere in this community.
Point of order.
Numerous times through you, Mr. President, with this point of order. This is what this point of order is. The the administration has said things that my colleague, Mr. Haney, has clearly, factually proven that we're not holding up anything, Mr. President. So that's out of order. Those statements are out of order. We're not holding up anything.
However,
This stuff can be done without the vote of this body. So,
However,
can we please stop? That's the game plan right there,
No,
Mr.
it-
President.
legislative
That's the
like
game
what?
plan. That's the trickery to this community. That's the politics that we've been accused of doing that is actually being done
Mr.
by the
President,
other
what's the
side.
point of
My
order?
point of order is that's not germane to this conversation. Let's move on with the vote, Mr. President.
Legislator Lightfoot, thank you. I'm going to deny your point of order, but I am going to ask you to summarize. This is one legislator's statement at this point. Please summarize.
I will summarize, and with your permission, because I know it's a little off track, but I'd like to ask the question to the administration relative to this request for an LDC investigation, because I feel like that's the hurdle between passing a CIP and not passing a CIP. They've made it very clear that that's the hurdle. And so through you to the administration,
Point of order.
can somebody
Point
please
of order.
address
I have a
this
point of order.
investigation?
Excuse me. Point of order. You're all set? Thank you, Legislator Lightfoot. The floor is yours again.
Once again, clarifying the question, with your permission to the administration, regarding this LDC investigation that the minority has placed such importance on. Would somebody address that, please?
Through the president, I just want to make it one thing clear is that the engagement of Mr. Vacco was for the purpose of reviewing the process here, and he certainly has done that in cooperation with the Attorney General's office. We all are aware that the State Comptroller has conducted audits, and the Attorney General's office, the State Attorney General's office, has and is investigating. So certainly those two entities, I assume everyone in this room would agree, are perfectly capable and of conducting their investigations. There is no currently investigation being undertaken by Mr. Vacco.
Okay, thank you. Does that answer it? Any other? Legislator Daniele? All done? Okay. Is there any other discussion at this time? Legislator Andrews?
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to respond to a couple of the points that have been made so far and also explain my vote. Legislator Daniele just insinuated that if this motion is defeated right now, that we won't be able to bring it back except for extraordinary measures. And I understand the motion to reconsider can only be considered one time, but it's a simple suspension of the rules would allow us to bring it back at a future point in time. Suspending the rules is something this body does on occasion. Certainly it's not that unusual or extraordinary, so I don't want people to be left with the impression that if this plan is defeated today, that that everything's done and it can't ever come back, because that's totally not true. As Legislator Lightfoot talked about as well, and Legislator Haney regarding the Children's Detention Center, which we all, I think, acknowledge is off point at this point in time, but has been brought up in debate over this motion. Legislator Lightfoot talked about the number of times over the course of this year, especially during the Human Services Committee, that we have brought up this very topic and received almost no information. Perhaps in the summer at one point, I do believe Commissioner Reed came in and talked to us a little bit about it. But recently as last week, the questions that were asked during the budget were not answered with sufficient answers to indicate any sense of urgency whatsoever. And so the fact that you've been working on this for weeks, I believe the Deputy County Executive stated, and it could in fact be much longer than that, is news to us. It was never shared. And so its urgency this morning is confounding, because all of a sudden we find ourselves here having to deal with this issue. Earlier in the week, after this caucus chose to vote against the bonding resolutions for the CIP, the first thing that came out of the administration's mouth and the majorities was that we were going to kill MCC then. The downtown campus was in jeopardy. That's the first thing I heard. Well, two or 3 days ago, in fact, we proved that to be totally false, because we authorized $7 million of contracts for the MCC downtown campus to proceed as scheduled in 2014. So there was an entirely false claim that was lobbied against us in the votes with the CIP. So now this morning we're hearing this huge crisis with the Children's Detention Center and the Costco project if, again, the CIP isn't passed. And again, it is a manufactured crisis for purely political reasons. There is nothing else that you can say about it except that. It is just not true that a vote against the CIP this morning will defeat or kill that project. The state is going forward with that work, as Legislator Haney described. We know that to be true. We know that kids can move in there within the next couple of weeks. We know that Costco can go forward. This is just simply not true. It's another leverage point, as Legislator Daniele alluded to, that's being used against this caucus to try to persuade or intimidate or coerce us to change our votes for the CIP. And since Legislator Daniele did bring it up, the importance of this LDC investigation just cannot be spoken to enough. We just have a situation here where the county executive simply cannot continue to investigate herself. She has clear conflicts of interest. It's not credible. It's just not right for the community. And this is the first time I've heard.
Point of order.
As we have heard from the Deputy County Executive, the review done by Attorney Vacco is for internal purposes to help to cooperate with the external investigations. So there is no investigating ourselves or herself. This is the way it has to be done to help answer the questions that the state may have and to help guide us through any issues that we may want to address.
I believe, Legislator Tucciarello, that your point of order, you are correct that that statement has been made. So can we please summarize where you wanted to go? I know you wanted to say what your vote was, so can we summarize that
Sure.
up quickly? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would say also that is the most, from Deputy County Executive, that is the most explanation I've heard to date, despite asking for 6 months about what Mr. Vacco is actually doing for this county. I mean, quite frankly, we have been asking that question over and over and over and over again and get absolutely no answers. And I do believe the word, the quote, internal review has been used several times by the administration to explain his work. So this is certainly news to me. Perhaps the majority knew about it. It's news to me, in fact, that he's not doing an internal review.
I've actually heard the minority leader use internal review as a term to describe this.
To quote what Mr. Vacco has stated he has been doing was why I've been using it. To summarize, I will be voting against the CIP this morning. Thank you.
Legislator Quattro.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Before I decide how I'm going to vote, I have a couple of questions that have been raised, quite frankly, here today. Through you to the administration, this certainly has become urgent over the last 48 hours. There's been an awful lot of discussion about when we were going to have this meeting. It could have been as early as, I guess, yesterday that we could have had this meeting, but at the bequest of the President, we had it this morning. And that was out of sensitivity, I guess, to all of us and our working hours, which are now, quite frankly, shot for me after all of what is mostly pointless debate. But through you, Mr. President, to the administration, why is this? You mentioned the state. You mentioned that you have been having some discussions with the state. I'm asking these questions of the Deputy County Executive. Why is this so urgent all of a sudden?
Through the President, it really isn't, well, let me withdraw that. Through the President, the first thing I would like to point out is that one of the people involved with the negotiations, and maybe I didn't say it before, but is former legislator Vincent Esposito, who works now with Empire State Development and who has told me repeatedly that he has informed Legislator Andrews of the progress of this project. Maybe Mr. Esposito was misspeaking, but I doubt it. He has repeatedly told me that.
Okay, but Mr. President, if you don't mind, let me repeat my question.
Point of order, Mr. President.
Legislator Baroff, I will conduct the business of this floor. It is my duties and responsibilities as president. I do not need to be reminded from the second aisle, the back there, of what I have to do. I was going to address him as quickly as I can turn around and do that. Please, give me the courtesy of allowing me to run this meeting. Thank you. Thank you. Legislator Lightfoot, yes.
My point of order is simply this, Mr. President. My colleague, Mr. Quattro, there asked this question. He asked the administration through you, Mr. President, could you tell us why there's a sense of urgency? That has already been answered or questioned and answered this morning. So my point of order is that question
With
should not,
all due
why, let's go
deference
to a roll
to
call
my
vote, Mr. President.
colleague,
Why are we
it
asking
hasn't been answered to my
questions?
satisfaction.
Point of order, Mr. President.
Hey,
Point of
I have
order.
a point of
Check the
order.
records.
I have a point of
That
order, please.
question has been asked and answered, Mr. So
I
it's out
believe-
of, it's out of order.
I believe that I'm going to rule your point of order out of order because here, and the reason stating is that a legislator has said that they have not had that answered clearly for them. I believe there are 28 of us here today, or no, I'm sorry, 27 of us here today, and I believe that if he doesn't have the answer, I think he can ask that question, and that's what he's doing. Please continue.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. This meeting came, the reason that we're here at 6 in the morning is the request of the administration, quite frankly. They asked for the special meeting. So I want to understand what the urgency is. And it hasn't been answered to my satisfaction. So through you, Mr. President, to the Deputy County Executive, I'd appreciate the answer.
Through the President, I apologize if I didn't answer it sufficiently. I'll try, and if I don't, feel free to ask again.
Count on it.
Mr. President, during the negotiations with the state, it was not anticipated that the capital budget would be held hostage by members of this legislature from the Democratic side of the aisle. Didn't come up because the project is a good project leading to another good project, the Costco project, which is supported by the governor's office, which is supported by City Hall, and which is supported certainly by this administration. So the thought that the capital budget wouldn't be approved and would instead be held hostage and that lines would be drawn in the sand over items, by the way, totally unrelated to the merits of any project in the capital budget, I might add, that didn't come up because the conversations were being had by reasonable people that wanted to move these projects forward. That is why we're here today. As I said earlier, as we speak, well, frankly, no, work is not going on because we told the state yesterday to cease work. And we did that because we did not want to put more taxpayer money at risk by spending money when the capital budget was not approved. It was the wise thing to do to put this matter once again before this legislature for an affirmative vote on this project and all the projects. And I might add, Mr. President, since it was raised, the idea that MCC is not in jeopardy is false. Even though that referral for awarding the construction management and the design passed through the committees, what we are being asked to do, apparently, by the minority leader is to spend more taxpayer money without knowing whether the MCC project is going to be approved in the capital budget. Also, an unwise move. Therefore, that is another reason why we are here today. Either these projects have merit or they do not. That is the issue before this legislature today. And frankly, it's very simple, and it shouldn't not be clouded by issues unrelated to it. Very, very simple. You either are in favor of the move and in favor of the Costco project, or you are not.
Okay,
Thank you.
Point of order.
Member of the administration is debating the matter before us rather than simply answering the honorable legislator's question. It is not appropriate for a member of the administration to be debating the matter before us.
Legislator Haney, I'm going to rule your point of order out of order. He was making a statement, and I believe he summarized it.
I appeal the ruling of the chair.
Okay, I need a second. Okay. Okay, roll call vote. Thank you.
Mr. Willie Lightfoot, you seconded that motion to appeal? Okay. Yes sustains the ruling of the president. Mr. Tucciarello? Yes. Ms. Andrews? Yes. Mr. Ansello? Yes. Mr. Antelli? Yes. Mr. Barker? Yes. Mr. Baroth? No. Ms. Boyce? Yes. Dr. Carbone? Yes. Mr. Colby? Yes. Mr. Daniele? Yes. Mrs. Draw? Yes. Mr. Gamble? No. Mr. Gamina? Yes. Mr. Haney? No. Mr. Hanna? Yes. Mr. Howland? Yes. Ms. Kaylee? No. Mr. John Lightfoot? No. Mr. Willie Lightfoot? No. Mr. McCann? Mr. Michike? Mr. Morelli? Dr. Quattro? Mr. Rocco? Mrs. Valerio is excused. Mr. Wilcox? Mr. Yolovich? President Adair?
Yes.
18 to 9. President's ruling is sustained.
Okay, Legislator Quattro, you have the floor, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Through you to the Deputy County Executive, you had a discussion with the state. What's the state's role, and what was their response to, or help me to understand what their role is in all of this. I know that they've expended some money in Rush, per what I've read and heard. Where are we at with them?
Through the President, the state has been extremely cooperative with this project. Really, obviously, we couldn't have done it without them, and it's been a pleasure to work with the governor's office trying to see this project
I
through.
don't believe the Deputy County Executive can speak on behalf of the state. He
I
doesn't
didn't
represent the state.
Believe he was just answering his question.
I asked about, but I asked
The
about
state's
the
Yeah, I believe
interaction.
he's answering a question, so.
I just asked about the interaction
Thank
that
you.
the Deputy County Executive had with the
I
state.
got it.
I think
I got
that's
it.
fair.
Continue, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. So the state's role, very simply put, is the state owns the property. Therefore, the state is the entity that controls the construction work at the moment. The governor's office, as I was saying, has worked diligently with its various agencies to make sure that the construction work, which was ongoing until yesterday, would meet specifications needed by our Children's Detention Center and obviously state regulations as well. We've had ongoing discussions with them about necessary legislation, about necessary rules, regulations, and construction work for several weeks. Again, not anticipating that this project and many others would be held hostage as that term has been used.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And if I may also add, it has always been the discussion with the state and that this would be a short-term lease, if you will, so that the full build-out could, and that the county would ultimately own it, which is in the best interest of the taxpayer as well.
Through you, Mr. President, thank you for anticipating my next question. I was here for the debate with regards to the CIP when it failed a week ago Tuesday, and the crux of the debate was the issue over some sort of investigation that this legislative body could possibly do better than the FBI and the AG. That was the reason that the CIP was held up. The minority leader strained, despite our attempts to raise points of order, to make that the issue. So I appreciate that Legislator Daniele asked the questions about the LDC, because let's take down all the facades here. That's what this is about. It's all about the LDC investigation. So through you, Mr. President, once again, to the Deputy County Executive, there is no investigation that the County Executive is doing on herself. Is that correct?
Through the President, yes, that is
Through
totally
you, Mr.
correct.
President, to the Deputy County Executive, has there been an instance whereby the Deputy County Executive, with regards to the LDC issue, has been investigating herself?
Through the President, the County Executive is not investigating herself.
So through you, Mr. President, just to clarify Mr. Vacco's role here, Mr. Vacco's role was to examine our policy as a county. We are utilizing his expertise to make sure as a county we're doing the right thing with LDCs, not necessarily with these current investigations that are happening outside of the county. Is that correct?
Through the President, yes.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm going to vote yes for this, Mr. President, because it's time that this political posturing ends. It's time that we stop trying to put investigation and LDC into every piece of discussion that we have in this legislature. It's time that we stop holding up jobs. This is absolutely ridiculous. So my vote, the explanation for my vote.
Point of order. Point of order.
Mr. President, thank you. Again, as you stated, Mr. President, there are 28 members in this chamber. These are his, these are
27.
27, I'm sorry.
I
with the
corrected
exception of
myself.
one. I'm correcting too, thank you. This is simply, Mr. Quattro is acting as he's speaking on behalf of all, Mr. Quattro is acting as he's speaking on behalf of all of everyone in this room. He is not,
No,
Mr.
and
President.
to your
And
point.
so to say that
Excuse
we're
me.
doing this or he said we're doing this. So we're not doing that.
believe-
Mr. President, so point of order is, could he please summarize so
Yeah.
we can get to a
Point
roll
of-
call vote, Mr. President?
Point of order, Legislator Lightfoot. I agree. I believe he is summarizing, and he has made a statement. So, are
I
you
think I made it clear why I'm going to vote yes. This is
Thank you.
absolutely ridiculous.
All righty, thank you.
So I vote yes.
ready? Good. Is there any other discussion? Legislator Kaley.
I rise to speak to the merit of the projects that have been so eloquently described by our Deputy County Executive and explain my vote. It is not the merit of the projects that we're debating here. It is the merit of its presentation and the information, how it has not been given out, the lack of meritable information made available to the public and the legislature as a whole. Last week, I believe it was, or the last month, I made the request for information on an update of the Children's Detention Center. And the response I got was, well, we're negotiating it, we're working on it, we're working on a long-term and short-term situation. Now, that has been the answer that we have gotten whenever we've asked about the Children's Detention Center. It has been, we're working on it. I would hold that if we are being questioned as the merit of our votes and we're questioned as to having any value whatsoever, that the information would be shared. And no information has been shared. It all comes down to a last-minute memo of urgency that it doesn't need to be that way. If information were shared equally across the floor of this body, we would not be in this situation. I have no idea whether anyone on the other side of the aisle has any more information than I do. But if you don't, then how can you in good conscience just go ahead and vote yes? I don't understand.
I prefer not to get any more lectures from the left on my conscience. Thank you very much. It's not a matter of conscience, it's a matter of fact.
Continues. Legislator.
Thank you so much, but it is a matter of conscience, and whether you like it or not, call me on a point of order again. The fact is that the information is not free-flowing. It does not get given to this side of the aisle. And if you want more cooperation, perhaps you would share what you are allowed to share. And I think a great deal of what has been said about the Children's Detention Center is shareable information, and it could have happened before this morning.
Thank you. Sorry. Is there any other discussion at this time? Legislator Wilcox.
Through you to the administration, have you briefed anybody in the county legislature about the Children's Detention Center before today?
Through the president, I believe that Commissioner Reed has provided information to some members of the legislature, the same information that was provided to Vincent Esposito, who told me again that he had been briefing Legislator Andrews, and I have no reason to disbelieve Mr. Esposito.
I'm not asking about Mr. Esposito. I'm asking about the administration.
Right, through the president, I answered that question, but I wanted to make sure that Legislator Kelly's concern, or Kaylee's concern, was addressed in terms of information flow.
Yeah.
When a representative of the state, the Empire State Development Corporation, informs me that he is keeping members of the legislature advised of the status of the project, who am I to question that? He's been a member of this body. He knows exactly how things work. And when he tells me that he's keeping the minority leader posted, I assume that fact to be true. And with good reason, I might add, because Mr. Esposito has been working very hard to get this project through as well.
Thank you.
Because jobs are important to him.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I apologize. I don't believe that my question's been answered. I actually was asking if you had briefed or the administration, other than Kelly Reed, I understand that Kelly Reed has had some conversations, but specifically, when did construction begin? Through you, Mr. President.
Through the president, I believe it was shortly after Thanksgiving.
Shortly.
After a discussion with all entities involved, including Vincent Esposito.
Did any, through you, Mr. President, did anybody from the administration at that point brief anyone in the legislature, including the president, the majority leader, on this construction, that it was being undertaken?
Point of order. To bring up the same point of order that I brought up before. We're talking about the capital budget. Right now, the Children's Detention Center is not in the capital budget. Can we please get on with the capital budget?
I believe you are correct. If you want, I mean, can we clarify that? I just don't want to confuse people.
I
We're
understand.
talking about something else.
No,
right
thank you.
now, as Legislator Lightfoot has put it, and I wholeheartedly agree with him, we would need to move to a vote on this. And then if there's questions beyond that, to the
I can ask them then? Because
I think so. I think that would be appropriate then.
I have
Then it
noticed
won't confuse things.
we've got
But I
them.
believe, I would urge my colleagues at this time that we take a roll call
Okay, because
vote.
I have noticed we've gotten into LDCs, and we've talked a bit
Sure
about
we have,
those
yes. And
investigations.
I'm trying to keep everybody grounded and
Okay.
focused on item number 2 right now.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. President.
All righty. Is there any other discussion? Legislator Andrews.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to clarify just a couple of things. First of all, as a legislator in this body, I have made repeated attempts to this administration for information about the Children's Detention Center. What Mr.
Did I stutter?
No, you did not. And Legislator Andrews, as I told Legislator Wilcox, we can certainly talk about that under number 3, but I'm going to go with my colleague on this, Legislator Lightfoot, and let's go for a roll call vote and get this one out of the way,
Okay.
and
I'll
then
change
we'll
my-
move to that one.
Thank you,
Okay?
Mr. President.
Thank you. So I am ruling that you are out of order at this point.
Okay, I'm going to pivot a little bit then, because the Democratic caucus's ask or introduction of an investigatory referral for the LDC matter has been brought up in connection with the CIP. And so I perhaps would be open to re-examining my view of the need for a legislative investigatory committee to do a thorough investigation into the LDC matter if I knew more about what, in fact, Mr. Vacco was doing right now for the county. And so I would like to have an opportunity to ask some questions, because that's been brought up as essentially the stalemate, to understand better who he's met with and what he's doing. So if I would be allowed to proceed with that line of questioning, then perhaps we could revisit this whole issue. I would start with, I would like to know who Mr. Vacco has met with.
Hang on for one quick second. We are good. I'm not going to lead an investigation on this floor at this time. All right? I am not going to. We're not going to get into a question and debate about this. We have before us right now a vote for the 2014 capital budget. And why I applaud you saying that, you are willing to listen about doing something different than what your position has been before. At this point, I really believe we need to move on to this capital budget vote. And if it's something else than that, I believe that, submitting something and we'll get it into committees and stuff like that, that's totally within your purview to do. Okay?
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
That's unfortunate, because without that information, I'm not going to be able to change my position.
Okay,
But
thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Is there any other discussion at this time? Being none, I'll move to a roll call vote.
Mr. Tucciarello? Ms. Andrews? Mr. Ansello? Mr. Antelli? Mr. Barker? Mr. Baroth? Ms. Boyce? Dr. Carbone? Mr. Colby? Mr. Daniele? Mrs. Straw? Mr. Gamble? Mr. Gamina? Mr. Haney? Mr. Hanna? Mr. Howland? Miss Kaylee? Mr. John Lightfoot? Mr. Willie Lightfoot? Mr. McCann? Mr. Michike? Mr. Morelli? Dr. Quattro? Mr. Rocco? Mrs. Valerio is excused. Mr. Wilcox? Mr. Yolovich? President Adair?
Yes.
18 to 9, motion fails.
Next item, please.
Item number 3, referral 13-371.
It is moved by Legislator Tucciarello, it is second by Legislators Boyce and by Legislators Yolovich. This is the motion to adopt. Is there any discussion at this time? Legislator Andrews.
Mr. President, I would like to pick up where I left off before and just clarify that our repeated requests for information stem from being a member of this honorable body, working with this county administration.
Bless you.
Any conversations I've had or anyone else has had with Mr. Esposito are really not relevant to the point of when I ask for information from this county, I have essentially been told nothing, or as Legislator Cayley said, well, there's a short-term and a long-term, blah, 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 nothing else. So that's why I feel I've been denied requests from here. Legislator Quattro, please.
Point of
I
information.
would just like to ask, just so I can help understand your position better, could you please outline the discussions that you've had with Mr. Esposito with regards to the Children's Detention Center?
No.
Just so I can help better understand your position.
No, I won't.
I don't.
Thank you very much, Mr. President.
I don't
Continue.
think it's any of your business.
Continue. There's no, continue.
None of my business.
So,
Appreciate that.
as a member of this body, when I ask for information, I should get it. I usually, on some topics I do, on some topics I don't.
Point of information's been solved to my satisfaction. Thank you very much.
Continue.
Thank you. Something that in other years, when we've needed to make an amendment to the capital improvement program, we've amended the current year's capital improvement program. So, for example, in 2008, in December, there was an amendment to the 2008 CIP for the Rocky Coast exhibit. In 2009, in December, we amended that year's CIP, the 2009 CIP, for the green fueling station. In 2010, we made an amendment to the 2010 CIP for the lion exhibit. So at this point in time, 2013, what would be wholly appropriate in order to facilitate the Children's Detention Center moving forward as described today would be to amend the 2013 CIP, because we are in 2013 and we have a history of doing amendments to 2013 CIP, and in fact that's an undisputed document. It's a document that's passed. It's a document that can move forward. It's a document that everybody in this body supported. So if the purpose of doing this today is not purely political and is not solely to manufacture a crisis and to try to put this side of the aisle in a jam, then I would fully support amending the 2013 CIP so that everything can go forward as envisioned and outlined this morning. So therefore, at this point in time, I would propose an amendment that we amend the 2013 through 2018 CIP to incorporate the Children's Detention Center project so that that issue will be taken off the table and everyone can move forward in a satisfactory way until we can resolve the other outstanding issues we have about the 2014 CIP. Is there a second?
I have a motion made by Legislator Andrews. I have a second by Legislator Cayley, and I believe they are distributing the referral to us right now. Back to the amendment. I have a question to our to the county legal team. Can we in fact we entertain this amendment today on this floor? I believe it's out of
Through the president, as a former member of the county's legal team, I'm going to try to answer that, and then I will defer to the county attorney and our finance officer. This motion currently being made to amend was actually made by Legislator Haney the other day at the planning board for similar reasons. And that motion was overwhelmingly defeated at the planning board because the planning board felt it more appropriate that this project be placed in the 2014-2019 capital improvement program because the anticipated purchase and full build-out of the new children's detention center would be in 2014. As far as financial implications, I will defer either to the county attorney or our financial officer.
Mr. President, just to add to what the Deputy County Executive has said, our charter does not allow this amendment to go forward because it has, in fact, not been approved by the Planning Board.
Mr. President.
Excuse me, I have a point of order on the floor, and I was just writing down my notes. Point of order?
Thank you, Mr. President. I believe the charter actually does allow us to make this motion amendment because it's not required that it go before the planning board prior. This body is actually able to amend and then have it go to the planning board. So that decision's not binding.
Mr. President, that's not correct.
Thank you.
Could you please
I will rule the point of order out of order. Okay.
Another point of order?
Another point of order.
Could you please cite that section? It's simply not true.
Same question, out of order.
It's not a question. It's
Same point of order, it's out of order. Thank you. It's denied. Point of information, go ahead.
Could you please cite in the charter where that is listed?
Same question.
Mr. President.
Respectfully, sir, I don't believe that it is.
Same question.
I'm asking for information.
Thank you.
Mr. President, if I
Yes.
could just interject, perhaps. Section 2 of this amendment refers to striking 2014 capital budget and replacing it with 2013 capital budget. I believe that would be inappropriate. Our charter defines the capital budget as the first year of financing needed, the financing needed for the first year of the CIP. Monroe County is not incurring any liabilities in 2013 for the Children's Detention Center, and we will expend no funds. Therefore, it would be amending the 2013 capital budget for $0. That would be inappropriate.
Okay, thank you. That answers that. I am going to rule that this amendment is out of order. Back to the main motion. Is there any other discussion? Legislator Haney.
Thank you, Mr. President. Since my name has been invoked in regard to this item number 3 on the agenda, indeed, the County Planning Commission met Wednesday afternoon on 24 hours advance notice to consider adding the Children's Center project to the 2014-19 capital budget. And indeed, as the Deputy County Executive stated, I moved at that meeting that resolution of the Planning Commission be amended so that the addition be made to the 2013-18 CIP rather than the 2014 CIP. And indeed, that motion was seconded by one of the Republican appointees to the county legislature. To the Planning Commission. The intent of that was to make sure that the Children's Detention Center project would move forward. Unfortunately, the Deputy County Executive, who was a member of the County Planning Commission, strongly urged the Planning Commission not to adopt the amendment. And since most of the members of the Planning Commission are actually county employees, the Planning Commission, following the direction of the Deputy County Executive, rejected the amendment I had offered. That, Mr. President, was proof that this whole game about the Children's Detention Center is nothing more than an effort to create a box that they hoped they could box the minority members of this legislature into. But for the reasons I stated before, and I won't belabor the point by repeating them, there is no reason why the Children's Detention Center project cannot move forward without any additional action by the legislature at this point, even though I am going to vote for this. And I would note that if construction has in fact been halted at the site in Rush, that it was halted solely at the behest of the administration and not in any way, shape, or form at the behest or suggestion of the legislature. So that if the project has been halted, the sole blame for the halting of the project lies with the administration for requesting the state to halt the construction.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion at this time? Legislator Quattro.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And again, through you to the Deputy County Executive, we just heard some comments from Legislator Haney with regards to a vote on the planning board. I'm not a member of that planning board. The assertion was that people voted because with you or at your urging because they're employees, which I think is interesting, and you can address that if you'd like to. But I would like to understand, or I would like you to explain the position of the planning board in defeating this amendment the other day in the planning board. Since Mr. Haney brought it up,
Point of order. Point of order. Point of order.
Was okay when Mr. Haney was doing it, wasn't it, Mr. President?
We have business to take care of.
Excuse me. Excuse me. Excuse me. Mr. Lightfoot. Mr. Lightfoot. Your point of order. Your point of order. Okay, is well taken. But I gave the floor to you.
We have business before us, Mr. President.
Yes, we do.
Let's take care of the business before us, Mr. President.
Let's go back to your point of order. Let's go. Wait a minute. Folks, remember, each legislator has the opportunity to speak. Okay.
I understand that.
And we're going to let Legislator Quattro speak at this point. All right.
Mr. President,
Wait.
He asked a question explaining about the planning board.
If that's the question he wants.
Is not here for the planning board. That's exactly.
Legislator Quattro. Legislator Quattro, I will take care of this point of order.
Play the tape back.
Excuse me, Legislator Lightfoot.
Explain us about the planning board. Okay, we're not here for the planning board, Mr. President.
But
we're here to conduct the
Legislator
business
Lightfoot,
before us.
I agree with you.
None of us need to know
Excuse me.
about that.
Excuse me. I agree with you.
Let's move
I
the
agree
roll
with
call
you.
vote.
I agree with you, but it was brought up by another legislator. It wasn't brought up by Legislator Quattro or anybody else. And that's why he's asking that question at this point. There's no other reason. If it hadn't been brought up in the first place, it wouldn't have to be. He doesn't have to ask this question. So please.
So I just want a quick answer. I'm not asking to belabor the point, but I think that since an aspersion was cast onto the Deputy County Executive, he has absolutely every right to defend himself and to answer my question.
Okay.
So through you, Mr. President.
Through the president, at the planning board yesterday, whenever the meeting was, yes, I opposed Mr. Haney's motion, and I assume that people voted the way they voted because they thought that was the right vote to make. Also discussed at the planning board was the reason, or were the reasons for urgent action now. So when I hear a legislator today saying that there is no reason why we can't move, that's wrong. And I want to make clear the reasons we need to move forward today. First and foremost is that as we speak, money is being expended until the work was stopped. Taxpayer money was being spent on this project because of the urgent nature of it. So to say there is no reason why the children can't move, there's a very good reason. Dollars. It would be ill-advised for the county administration to move forward and continue to have the state spend money unless this capital budget were approved. It's that simple. That's the reason. And the discussions with the state have always centered on a long-term solution. That is a county purchase of the property. That is the best thing for the taxpayers. A long-term solution and a purchase of the property.
Thank you
It
very
is
much.
urgent that we be here today.
Point of order. I have a point of order.
I believe I've stated before that the reason for we weren't able to amend the 2013 CIP is that no money had been expended, where in fact now it was just stated that in fact money has been expended until it was ordered stopped by the county yesterday. It seems inconsistent to me.
Thank you. Point of order taken. At this time, we'll move to a roll call vote. No, the amendment
No, the amendment was
this
ruled
is
out
back
of order
on
on the main motion. Mr. Tucciarello?
Yes.
Ms. Andrews? Mr. Ansello? Mr. Antelli? Mr. Barker? Mr. Baroth? Ms. Boyce? Dr. Carbone? Mr. Colby? Mr. Daniele? Mrs. Draw? Mr. Gamble? Mr. Gamina? Mr. Haney? Mr. Hanna? Mr. Howland? Ms. Cayley? Mr. John Lightfoot? Mr. Willie Lightfoot? Mr. McCann? Mr. Michike? Mr. Morelli? Dr. Quattro? Mr. Rocco? Mrs. Valerio is excused. Mr. Wilcox? Mr. Yolovich? President Adair?
Yes.
26, motion is adopted.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Item number 4, referral 13-371BR.
Moved by Legislator Tucciarello, seconded by Legislator Yolovich, seconded by Legislator Boyce. Discussion. Moved to table a second by Legislator McCann. Move to a roll call vote on tabling it. It's not debatable. Move to a roll call vote for tabling. Move to a roll call vote on tabling. We do not debate it, tabling.
Mr. Tucciarello, motion to table. Ms. Andrews.
Please vote. It's been
I'm
tabled.
in the middle of a
It's
roll
tabling
call vote,
motion.
please.
Please vote. please vote. We have a table in front of us. Thank you.
Mr. Ansello? Mr. Antelli? Mr. Barker? Mr. Baroth? Mr. Baroth? Yes? Ms. Boyce? Dr. Carbone? Mr. Colby? Mr. Daniele? Mrs. Draw? Mr. Gamble? Mr. Gamina? Mr. Haney? Mr. Hanna? Mr. Holland? Ms. Kaylee? Mr. John Lightfoot? Mr. Willie Lightfoot? Mr. McCann? Mr. Michike? Mr. Morelli? Dr. Quattro? Mr. Rocco? Mrs. Valerio is excused. Mr. Wilcox? Mr. Yolovich? President Adair?
Yes.
18-8, motion to table passes.
Item number 4 is now tabled. Is there any other business to come before this? Being no other business?
The next meeting of the Monroe County Legislature is scheduled for Tuesday, January 14th at 6 p.m. Thank you.